To the viewers outside here, you're welcome on the Youths Podcast. As you know, this is a platform that allows youths to share their ideas on issues that are trending in our country here. As of today, we are going to dive into a trending story in our country. Uh, for over the years, as South Sudan, our country has not been at ease. So that's why we have the youth podcast to come and raise an awareness on that. So today we shall mainly talk about why South Sudan's security remains threatened, and the thing that the civilians hold the guns. You know, a country where civilians always hold the guns is not said to be a free country.
Yeah, so
People don't move freely when civilians also hold the guns, because constitutionally that is the guns are limited to be used only by the government. Now, on your view, Chanskin, I would like to ask, what do you think keeps South Sudan behind? Because we have seen civilians. Okay, why do you think the security of South Sudan remains threatened under the guise that South Sudan, okay, civilians in South Sudan, they still hold guns at the day?
thank you so much, Alex. Yeah, it is true that our security in South Sudan has been threatened because civilians they hold guns. Understand? Of course, I can put much of my blame on the so-called soldiers that are recruited. Yeah, I know the fact that of course there are some sources where these civilians can find some of these arms, but most especially I would like to put my blame on the soldiers that we recruit. Understand? I cannot. It is not necessarily meaning that I'm blaming His Excellency here, but I'm blaming the soldiers that are being recruited. Some of us recruit soldiers are just I don't know what's the reason for recruiting soldiers, but the soldiers that we recruit, these are the same soldiers that are selling guns out, because the people that have access to some of these arms, they are really the soldiers. You understand? So we cannot say that civilians are finding as some of these arms in other sources. Of course, one of the sources can be that they get this from the soldiers. Understand? Of course, the soldiers that we recruit, some of them are not been qualified. Some of them don't know how they use gun for, and they go ahead and sell the guns to civilians just to get money. Because you all know the situation of the soldiers in the country, things are hard to them. So what they do, they sell their gun out. You understand? Even some of them they don't go like they cannot be recognized as soldiers. Maybe they put on their uniform. Some of them they're home every time. They're not even, I don't know, is it that the name just to be called soldiers? They sell their arms out, and that's why civilians have arms. And also, they're not consistent in disarming civilians. They know that civilians now hold guns. Some of these hostile people, they hold guns right now, yet they're not soldiers. But when they started the campaign of disarming civilians, they're not consistent in it. Just for some few, they stop. You understand? That is one of the things that makes civilians hold guns until now. So well, our security is threatened because these are the same civilians that are threatening people, robbing people, using their guns, killing innocent souls. That is the issue. Understand? If these soldiers, if you can recruit like these qualified soldiers, the ones that know what they're doing, you understand? We cannot these cases of this insecurity will reduce. We'll find out that non civilians will not hold guns if they really consistent in disarming people. We are talking about the whole of South Sudan, but I know surely most emphasis they put in this is disarming the civilians in Juba. Some part of the nation there, they don't put so much interest in. Understand? And even if that's something here in Juba, it's not also consistent, as I said before. That's one of the things that is making these civilians hold guns until now, and our security is threatened in the nation.
As you said that, because if I get you clearly, you mean these guns they are got from the soldiers themselves. The soldiers also sell to the civilians. Okay, because there's this report here that in Tonj North, that is in Warab State.
Yeah.
There's this report here that there were civilians that handed their weapons freely. What would you say about the disarmament strategy the government of South Sudan is putting in place to get those guns back, with the guns that were put the civilians? Because there's a number of youths that are surrendered and gave their arms to the government. What other strategies would you think or recommend that the government of South Sudan should use to get these arms? Because we have seen in other countries,
Yeah.
Uganda, we have seen how the UPDF were getting the guns from the Karamajong. These are the cattle handing
Yeah,
over
yeah, yeah.
guns.
That's right.
So because we have seen these guns with civilians, these people, we have seen robberies, raidings, cattle
Mm.
raiding,
Yes, oh, yeah.
and those people that are using guns, they
Mm.
aren't using maybe spears, or they're using guns.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
what other strategy do you think can be put in place? As you said, the government is not consistent in campaigning for disarmament.
Mm.
It's not consistent. Now, what other thing would you recommend that it should be done to get those guns back, or those firearms that civilians are holding and are illegal?
Yeah, it interests me when now youth and people and these civilians and us are rendering their arms to like the government, just like that. It interests me. You understand? Because I can talk you out of a thing by then. You understand? When someone is doing the wrong thing, it is possible for you to talk that person out of that wrong thing just by mere words. You understand? So sometimes, of course, the strategies the government uses in some of these things, they don't work. You understand? Because maybe the disarmament, the government, the soldiers can say, of course, they are going to disarm these civilians. They can even go to a house where there are these guns, but they will not find the guns because they know that these people are, of course, they are disarming people. They have the ways of hiding their guns. Understand? So about you suggesting like what other ways can be put in order to make this disarmament easy. I'm so persuaded that those civilians that are surrendered their arms to the government, there's something that what stirred in their heart, there's something that persuaded them. You understand? They can just come from nowhere, you understand? Then they do that. No, they understood maybe the danger of them holding the gun. And they understood the danger. They understood that it's not in them to what to hold guns. So what the government can do, they need to start some of these talks and some of these campaigns in just dialogues, like talking to people. You understand? They need to understand. So even we use force on sometimes force on people, it's not all good and change. You understand? That's why a leader is not like a boss. So a leader can talk someone peacefully out of it. So I suggest the government also this will start. If that strategy doesn't work, let them start doing this one here. Of talking dialogue, like talking people out of this thing. It can work by then.
Yeah, the strategy you said, they are having dialogue.
Yeah, yeah.
We also have seen in recent weeks, that is in Warab,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there's a state of emergency that was imposed by His Excellency. So, because these are authorities in Warab, what they did was to get down with the community that is in Warab,
Yeah.
and they call the youth representatives, and they also have the state officials, they have from the national government. They sit down, talk to these youths. That's why that is one of the reasons. That's why
Exactly.
these other youths they gave their guns free. But then there's a point at which sometimes when we use such strategies, dialogue, try to talk to the people so that they can support that campaign against that campaign to collect all these guns from the civilians. But then, if it fails, what would you suggest? Because some people will say force, that the government should use force. Because if they now, do you think that is the right thing to do if dialogue fails? Because this thing we call disarmament here, this is not the first time that they have they have they have campaigned for it.
Yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
is not the first time. So it has been for several times, and up to now we have okay, guns were all that collected. So what do you think? Like, if force fails, what can we else do?
Okay, as I said before about the talk like the Christopher Fella, because I'm sure that in Warab, they have just started recently, right? They have not been doing that before, right? So about the force, of course, there are some people that they think they're not patriotic at all. What they think is that they can't be themselves. They will not think of South Sudan, what they think of themselves, right? Most of these raiders, these cattle raiders, what they think is themselves. And they don't even think of there's a country that I need to protect. There's what they think of themselves. That was why when the government goes there, they will exchange fires with the government. If the government
Yeah, that's
disarm us and they will exchange fires. Understand? Those are some of those things. If the government can look for other strategies of this, and most especially the guys that threaten me as a queen are those cattle raiders. Those guys are hostile. And those are the very people that are threatening our security here. So if the government can find other strategies on how to disarm those people, it will be something better. Maybe talking them out of it can be hard. Because that's one to talk to them, it requires a lot. Because some of them are barbaric circles. They don't even think they have cousins, and they just think within their circles. That's a very dangerous thing. So let the government try so hard in this peace talk. Let them first try approach these people that understand.
As you said, nowadays, this other thing here, as the South Sudan, as the government of South Sudan has been placed under sanction, or it is an armed embargo that's been imposed on South Sudan, so it is not able to uh, purchase weapons from outside. So now that's why we had in the years when the Unified Force was graduated, they were lacking arms, they were said to have been graduated using sticks. So now, if civilians hold guns and the national army doesn't have enough of it or doesn't have the guns, now how is it going to be possible that we are going to disarm civilians? How is the government going to carry out that? Because South Sudan itself is not accessing guns from outside. And if you look at also our borderlands, I admit that our borderline here is not controlled by the national army. Some of these parts are under the control of these other nations. So there's a possibility that there are guns that come through all these borders to civilians. And the other thing I would also like to say is that these guns here, some of them were inherited because South Sudan for the last 20 years, let me say from 1983 up to 2005. We know we have been at war. So, when there's always war, those kind of things they happen. And when people, like when two groups get into altercation, you find that there are those things that are remain.
Yeah, of course.
That's why some of these civilians will find those guns from, and there they fail to register those guns with the government and give them this one. Even if I would suggest also sometimes the government should use this strategy here, because sometimes it will persuade the people to give out those guns. You call upon these people to register their guns and you pay them as the government. You pay them because that strategy works somewhere. That to get those guns, civilians are paid so that they register those guns. Because if we try dialogue and it fails, because we have heard of cases where when these government officials come to like a particular area, those ones that know themselves they hold guns, they take off. They are not ready to give those guns. That means and sometimes the community will sit down with the government, but it always fails. What I'm talking about is not something that has okay, just maybe because of recent. Of recent, it's going on well. But back in the years of 2020, we have seen these things have been happening. The disarmament has been happening, but it always fails. That's why sometimes these people also do not give out the guns just because, like, if community A has a problem with community B, you find it's quite hard for if the government reaches to community A and says these guns are constitutionally mandated only to be held by what? By the government. So you need to give out these guns to the government. Now you find that community A feels unsafe or feels insecure because my rival is holding it. So what I would say is that the government should also consider making the disarmament countrywide. These campaigns will go countrywide. It's not only focus on Warab, it's not only focus on Simple, it should go everywhere. So that when these guns are collected, it is only now the security, it is only the national army that is mandated to provide security. Because some of these people, they also have that mentality that we are holding these guns to defend ourselves from the enemies.
Exactly.
So that is the thing that has been in people for quite long.